Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's debate. It's crazy to think that we're already in week 5, the 5th debate of term, and it's wonderful to see so many faces join us week in and week out. It's particularly fitting to discuss tonight's motion a year after the 2024 general or US presidential election, and I'm sure many of you were here with us last year when we did the watch party, and I'm sure that some of you might have your feelings of joy or disappointment that I'm sure will come up in the discussion tonight. Before we get into tonight's proceedings, it would be very useful for us to go over the House rules. Just for a reminder for everybody, the motion before the House is as follows. This House believes today's America betrays the Founding Fathers. Here is the order of events. Speeches will last 10 minutes from our paper speakers, and we will have 3 speeches in proposition and 3 speeches in opposition. Throughout their speeches, it may be the case that the paper speakers may choose a point of information. Just for reference, a point of information is when you want to make a short rebuttal, seek clarification, or ask a question in the middle of a speech. Very simple to give. You put your hand up and say points of information. It is up to the paper speaker to decide whether or not they will hear from you or not. If they don't pick you, I promise you it's not personal, but do try and give a floor speech if that is the case. Speakers can take as many as they want to, and after that, we will then move on in the following order. First proposition, first opposition, round of floor speeches. Floor speeches last 3 to 5 minutes in length. Floor speeches are a chance where you can have a longer say based on the motion to develop your points. We will take one in proposition of the motion, opposition, and an abstention. Please do note that when we call upon floor speeches, please start by giving us your name and college. After the first round of floor speeches, we will move to second proposition, followed by second opposition, another round of floor speeches, then closing us off with third proposition and then third opposition. Just a reminder, particularly fittingly so, the floor speech prize this week is a copy of Kamala Davy Harris's 107 Days. So for those of you who have not had enough of the library, please let the prize guide you accordingly. Let the games begin. To our speakers, may the odds be ever in your favor. Beginning first this evening and opening the side-for-side proposition is Freddie Bishop. Freddie is a second-year student at Newnham College reading history and politics. Her interests lie in US foreign policy relations since World War II, specifically in relation to socialist and communist countries. She has also re-established the Newnham Political Society after 100 years of dormancy. She won the right to speak via open audition. Freddie, you have the ears of the House.
Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm guessing most of those in attendance have seen the hit Broadway show, Hamilton. For those of you with even a vaguest interest in American history, the musical is unavoidable. And despite what you may wish, Christopher Jackson is not George Washington. The dashing Daveed Diggs isn't the real Jefferson. And the omnipresent meme that is Lin-Manuel Miranda is not the real-life embodiment of Hamilton, no matter how much Tumblr wished it to be so. In actuality, the Founding Fathers are busy being dead. They have been buried for hundreds of years now. The last founding father to die was James Madison in 1836. Those with any inclination towards mathematics will know that that was 189 years ago. The point is, they do not care what we think of them, and they do not have an opinion on what is currently occurring in America. But the motion isn't whether we care what the Founding Fathers think, or if the Founding Fathers would care for the overgrown hegemonic monster the small sapling of a nation has mutated into. It is whether today's America betrays the Founding Fathers. By this meaning, whether today's America is a betrayal of what the Founding Fathers outlined for the America they birthed in the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the ratification of the ever-evolving Constitution. But further than this, one also has to take into account the fact that the Founding Fathers were not static beings, but living people with opinions that changed, and most importantly, people that had lives beyond their famed roles. They continued to comment on the comings and goings of politics, the attitudes shaped by the circumstances and issues that arose in their experiment. As a result of this, when attempting to fully comprehend and respond to the motion, one must take into account what the Founding Fathers contributed in the founding documents and what they said afterwards. I myself do not think it wise to adhere to every word of the Founding Fathers or approve of each and every action Because in arguing for the proposition, I acknowledge the blatant mythologizing of the Founding Fathers, a movement that has been thoroughly dissected by David Sahat, Andrew Seidel, and Joseph Ellis. But even despite this, I find myself arguing for the proposition, because looking at the promising nation that was outlined in comparison to today's America, it is undeniable that it betrays the Founding Fathers in terms of the deconstructing of the Constitution, religion and the state becoming intertwined, and the ruthless partisan political factionalism. Like many humanities students, I wish to inevitably rejoin the pyramid scheme, becoming a lecturer. To get into the true depth of the argument, this would ideally be a lecture, but since I don't want Roberta to kill me, I'll save you from my audition to snatch up a cushy lecturing job and get to the actual point. The Constitution worked because it was employed with rules and norms that all people were expected to abide by. A charter carefully formed to balance governmental powers and safeguard interests of the majority. But when those rules are eroded and ignored, there becomes a risk of a constitutional crisis. A dissolution of the checks and balances established with the express role of protecting the rights of citizens. Now, in my mention of citizens, I will preface with the fact that the minutiae of who was considered a citizen at the time of the Constitution's writing was extraordinarily narrow. But I believe this issue could be argued as being resolved when one takes into account that they left a way for the Constitution to be amended so that the document could evolve. This, of course, does not mitigate the systematic oppression that African Americans continue to experience despite amendments. But it was, in fact, Jefferson's words, his iconic and radical assertion that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that was used by Lincoln at the Gettysburg to affirm his dedication to the issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation and resulted in the eventual passing of the 13th Amendment, arguably an action that resulted in the fulfillment of America's founding creed. I would now argue that today's America betrays the Founding Fathers when one considers the Constitution and the power it invested in the judicial branch to act as a check for both the executive and the legislative branch. As in Trump's America, rulings by lower courts and the Supreme Court are optional suggestions, rather than compulsory. Immediate curbs on his power, he ignores them. It is in the preamble of the Constitution, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America, but is modern America, specifically the current president, truly adhering to this? The idea of the Constitution acting to promote the general welfare has been disregarded in light of recent actions by Trump in refusing to distribute the $6 million in contingency funds. Even despite the order from a federal judge, it is clear to see that the general welfare of the people of the US is not being promoted. It is being torn apart. Over 42 million Americans are going to go without food. This is a travesty. A president is willing to see millions starve, to use federal workers, seniors, and veterans without pay, to leave them without pay in an attempt to gain leverage against the opposition party. This is a direct violation of the vision of the Founding Fathers, who strongly warned about the dangers of factionalism. Washington wrote to Jefferson in 1796 that he had no conceptions that the parties would or even could go the lengths I have been to witness. And if Washington thought that was bad, he would die hundreds of times over if he saw the state of modern America. In addition to this, Project 2025, that Trump repeatedly attempted to distance himself from in his election campaign, despite his vice president having written the foreword, wrote that it desires to push forward the unitary executive theory, a move that will get rid of checks and balances outlined in the Constitution, reassign complete authority to the president, and establish the reign of God King Trump. Looking at the personnel crossover between the writers of Project 2025, staffers of the producers of the Heritage Foundation, and Trump's administration, something that was once labeled a kooky left-wing blue-anon conspiracy is now not so unbelievable.
Point of information.
Yes?
I have no kind words to say about Donald Trump.
I'm glad.
Wouldn't you say that the fact that the Supreme Court was arguing yesterday in oral arguments about whether his tariff policies are unconstitutional is proof that the court still, the judicial system still has power? The fact that we've had political parties in the United States for over 200 years is proof that the founders' warning against factionalism has been, if that's a betrayal, it's been betrayed for 200 years. So I don't quite see your point.
Thank you. I will get to that. One of the most important ideas espoused by the Founding Fathers was the separation of church and state. As outlined in the first line of the First Amendment, Congress shall make no laws respecting an establishment of religion. The idea of the free practice of religion was also fundamental in the establishment of the colonies that eventually made up the United States, as those who came and colonized the land were escaping religious persecution. John Adams affirmed the opinions expressed by Jefferson in the Bill of Rights, which eventually became the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, in his statement that the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. The United States was not founded on faith, but reason and sense. Whilst the founders themselves had their own religions, which they personally adhered to, this does not mean it affected every action made by them or that it makes the nation religious by proxy, because as shown, they were adamantly against this. The separation of church and state had been continuously violated, most significantly in the election and term of Ronald Reagan, whose allyship with the religious evangelical moral majority is what won him the election, and then influenced his policies throughout his presidency. As warned by his opposition, Walter Mondale, this combination of religious issues with political campaign threatened the constitutional wall, separating the government and constitutional wall separating government and religion. Thank you. But I argue his ties with evangelical Christians in his election campaign showed preference to religious groups that since became a cornerstone in the election of Donald Trump, whose administration has seen the desecration of separation of church and state. A president should not be selling a Trump Bible for $60 to $90 or setting up a religious liberty commission to bring religion back to our country. I think you can guess who he's referring to by saying our country. Okay, I will now hurry up. I was going to talk about the partisanship in America, but I fear I'm running out of time. So I will conclude with this. This motion is not asking you to like the Founding Fathers. It is not asking you to respect them in any individual sense. And I'm especially not demanding you to idolize them. Simply put, the motion argues that you should weigh up their collective vision at the nation's founding and their opinions throughout their lives in comparison to the America that now exists. So, if you're against the intermingling of church and state, if you believe that everyone should have the ability to choose what religion to follow, but not enforce this on others, if you think what was outlined in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is being violated, if you desire for all people to be guaranteed life, liberty, and the ability to pursue happiness. And finally, if you think the current political climate of America shares the resemblance to a pack of hungry lions eating each other, and you disagree with the relentless personal attacks and judicial weaponization, then don't throw away your shot and walk through that eye door tonight. Thank you.